gridiron fanatics out there. Glad you could join us for the holiday edition of Gridiron Gab Pro Style. Where we gab about all things pro football, from the scoops of the regular season to the scores in the postseason and the picks in the offseason. Let's start gabbing.
The autumn winds move like the thunderous waves of Neptune's sacred palace. And here, amongst the blackened soil, lies the ragged hands, worn, torn, and callous. They await with cunning and vicious prowess, for the warriors have returned.
Come on, Dick! Don't do it! No way! You, 85! Crying out loud! Are you kidding me? You're driving me nuts!
But behold.
Welcome back, you guys, to Gridiron Gab Pro Style. Glad you could be with us yet again on this holiday season. Very busy, as much as it's busy for myself. Want to be the first to wish you guys a Merry Christmas and hope you have a great holiday season. Once again, I hope you guys have a happy holiday season and so on and so forth with your loved ones. But with part of the holiday season comes an onslaught of games, especially from the professional ranks, and with the doozy it comes the Bengals and the Steelers. Unfortunately, more than likely, this may be the last time we get to see this intense rivalry in its purest form, because this rivalry was built upon the Tomlin and Marvin Lewis era, and now we're slowly seeing as we did with Marvin Lewis, the departure, or I don't want to say downfall, but the dissipation of the Mike Tomlin Steelers. And if you guys want to hear what my thoughts are on that, please check out the show that was loaded up today along with this one. But we're here to talk about a rivalry that has gone one way as of, well, not necessarily, but even with the Burrowless Bengals, the Steelers have still managed to pull one out. T.J. Watt and some great players, but unfortunately for the Steelers, they will be without some important pieces that they have on defense, and of course they're also without quarterback Kenny Pickett. But let us not forget that the Cincinnati Bengals are without quarterback Joe Burrow. But for all intents and purposes, Jake Browning has shown some crazy flashes. Now, that's not to say that uber talented Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, and of course Joe Mixon, who has been a huge catalyst in the Cincinnati Bengals resurgence and a possible push to the playoffs, has not had a major factor in this. It has not been a major force, but he has. And I think it shows a major shift for Zach Taylor to allow the offense to go the way of Joe Mixon, because we're looking at a team that is really heavily reliant on the pass. And if this team makes the playoffs, this is going to be unprecedented, because Mixon was not on pace to break 1,000 yards. And there was a lot of people that were saying, was he worth the money? And we look back here at Najee Harris, the Pittsburgh Steelers tailback, and he's at 723 with 4 scores. Mixon's got 8 scores. He could arguably reach the 10-score mark before this season's over. But let's take a look here as is. We see the AFC North standings. The Ravens are at 11-3, Browns 9-5, Cincinnati Bengals, a team that looked like they were dead after the devastating injury to Joe Burrow, and they're 8-6. And once again, Pittsburgh's in the cellar. This is becoming an all too common thing for the Steelers, fighting for another 500 season, and not just the playoffs, but another 500 season. And with the 17 games, the Steelers only have one game that they can afford to lose with these 3 remaining games. And honestly, I think Saturday is going to be one of them, and they're going to end up having to go to Seattle and Baltimore and win. Now, that might not be a tough a task as you think to go to Baltimore and win because, well, if Baltimore keeps playing the way they're playing, they could very well finish the season early. Now, I'm not saying that's going to happen because, in essence, you're looking at a team that is trying to get that number 1 seed, and that's not going to be the easiest of tasks considering, the Ravens have a tough road themselves. They've got the Steelers in the finale, and of course, they themselves, have the 49ers. They go to San Fran this weekend, and then they got Miami. So it's conceivable, a team like Miami, who they're playing, who they're going against for the final playoff, for that number 1 spot in itself. They're 10-4. They're right there. And their path to the playoffs, I don't feel like it's nearly as, you could argue, the game they play against Buffalo, even though Buffalo's playing really good ball, and even the game this week against Dallas. I think this game against Dallas, this is going to tell us a lot where they are, but at the same time, I'm looking at it from the standpoint of, they got to have it. But anyway, I'm not here to play domino effect. We're here to talk about the game between the Bengals and the Steelers, whom, as I've said before, I think Tomlin's going to have them out to play. I just don't think it's going to be enough. I think ultimately, this is a game where, Jake Browning is getting his feet wet. Now, I will say, guys like TJ Watt on this Pittsburgh defense are going to be tough to deal with. You got Larry Ogunjobi, a former Cincinnati Bengal, Cameron Hayward. These guys are going to get after it. There's just, there's no way. Highsmith has been a huge upside for the Steelers. He's a guy of the future, but they are missing Fitzpatrick. They are missing this guy. He is huge to what they like to do on defense in that secondary. And for that reason, they're going to have to get pressure out the bazooka. And Jake Brown's got to turn the ball over. And now I'm going to put it to you like this. When Cincinnati has lost to the Steelers in recent years, I would say within the last 3 years of Burrow's top abilities, it's because they turned the ball over. It's not this, the Steelers have been better than them, and I will go on the record and say that. Pittsburgh has not been better than the Cincinnati Bengals. And there's no difference here, even with Kenny Pickett. I still don't think Pittsburgh's better than Cincinnati. I think for the most part, you're talking about a team that maximizes, and a guy in Mike Tomlin who maximizes what he gets out of his players. And for that reason, Pittsburgh is always in these games. This is not going to be the option here today. You've got 2 of your quarterbacks out. And Minkah Fitzpatrick, the guy who pretty much is the quarterback of that defense. And then you have Kenny Pickett, who's not there. Now, do I think guys like George Pickens have a chance and Deontay Johnson have a chance to show up and show out? Of course. But with Mason Rudolph as a quarterback, not sure. I'm not sure. I think George Pickens has the ability because he it's like 2 of the same players playing on opposite sides. And I'm referring to George Pickens and T. Higgins. Both of these guys are the same type of player. The thing about George Pickens is it's almost like when he decides he wants to play, he can be T. Higgins easily. He could arguably be better than T. Higgins if he chose to. And that's the thing that frustrates a lot of people in the Pittsburgh locker room and outside of it, myself included. And I mentioned this inside the show that we did about Mike Tomlin. I honestly think that George Pickens has an opportunity to be one of the top 10 receivers in this game. But he has the potential. But will he reach it? I don't think so. He's not mature enough for the game. And I think that's what ultimately allowed him to slip down out of the first round. And, looking here, the ultimate push that the Steelers are going to rely on is trying to get TJ Watt, Cameron Hayward, and Larry Ogunjobi in Jake Browning's face. And ultimately, that is the only way you're going to be able to get the Cincinnati Bengals route. Now, let's flip the script a little bit. looking over at what the Cincinnati Bengals have to offer is a tough sell. Because, of course, Jake Browning has been so good. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that, of course, Coach Zach Taylor has started to lean on Joe Mixon. Now, we do know Jamar Chase is not playing in this game, but that to me, that carries, it's an important thing. But then again, T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd have been so good, and we got to put Trent Irwin in there. This is a guy that is showing excellent promise as a guy that can step in, be that fourth wide receiver, and be that game breaker. But also, they've got an extra element in their tight end rooms between Drew Sample and Tanner Hudson, who's been a huge, individual who has come on the scene and really started to make some plays, as we saw in that Minnesota overtime win last Saturday. He had 5 catches for 49 yards. He's slowly been getting worked into this offense. And he's a big target. And you can tell that Zach Taylor in the offense, and Jake Browning as well, is comfortable with him, to the point that Drew Sample and even Irv Smith, who's a guy that has, had some receptions in the last couple of weeks. He had 3 targets last week and 2 receptions, but they are starting to more and more lean upon the tight end with Jake Browning as the quarterback. But what is so impressive about the way the Cincinnati Bengals are going about what they're doing on offense is they're not trying to put more on Jake Browning than he can handle. And what's really impressive is this offensive line is starting to come together and really work as a unit in the running game. And to me, that is what has been such a problem spot for the Bengals. And I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that the coaching staff was not pushing the fact they needed to run the ball. Now, Pittsburgh is pretty good stopping the run in most instances. But then here's the silent spot about the Cincinnati Bengals. They quietly have one of the best defenses in the league, despite losing both their safeties, and just losing Jesse Bates and Von Bell is enough to just put you down in the dumps. But I'm looking at this and I'm thinking about how good this defense could be if they had not lost Cam Taylor-Britt or DJ Reader. Now, I will say this will be a challenge, even though the Bengals were able to hold off the Minnesota Vikings and come back to win last week. It's going to be very different to see what they can do minus DJ Reader. Now, Myles Murphy came in and played huge. He played really well in that game against Minnesota. And if he can come in and fill the DJ Reader position, now I will say, it's, playing a guy like this, who's 6'3", replacing a guy, who's 6'3", 335, with a guy that's 6'5", 275, it's a different element. But I will say this. He came to play. You can't take away what Josh Tapua is doing, and most certainly you can't take away what B.J. Hill was doing. B.J. Hill had I call it the fumble interception, if you will. He's playing great. And honestly, he's playing such a big role out there with Myles Murphy and company. I think ultimately you've got to continue to, move them around and for no more than what these guys have done or given credit for. Let me rephrase that. Given how much no credit, Lou Anarumo, who probably will not be in Cincinnati next year. It would not surprise me if there's a lot of NFL teams calling for him. It wouldn't shock me if he got a phone call before the season was even over with, because looking at the way the Bengals defense has just been undervalued in so many different ways, there's going to be a lot of people calling for Lou Anarumo. He is such a good coach, and I'm sorry, I'm butchering his name. But I just think this defense is going to be the difference. Pittsburgh's defense is going to play their best. That's what they do. I think ultimately Cincinnati just needs to stop the run. I think he takes his shots to George Pickens, because Pickens is a nightmare. And when you got two corners like Awuzie and Mike Hilton and DJ Turner, well, excuse me, three. I'm sorry, I said two. Three of these guys, and honestly, Mike Hilton's not the starter. That's why the Cam Taylor-Britt injury is so freaking huge. And I remember 2 years ago when they drafted Dax Hill and Cam Taylor-Britt, and I was like, okay, they're preparing for Jesse Bates and Von Bell's departure. And I'm going to be honest with you, with Jordan Battle, Dax Hill, and Cam Taylor-Britt, it's almost like these guys have not missed a beat. I'm just being honest. You don't want to say that as a guy who is in favor of the players, but you get a guy like Jordan Battle in the third round, 6'1", 206 out of Alabama, and you plug him into where Jesse Bates, Von Bell was, and then you plug Dax Hill in where Jesse Bates was, and it just works. And then you get Cam Taylor-Britt where you had another, you let a free agent walk. I'm trying to remember who it was. He got burnt all the time, you guys. I'm sorry. But he was the thorn in the side of the Cincinnati Bengals defense. And it's this defense is so underappreciated, you guys. It's so underappreciated. But, Mike Hilton to me is one of the most savvy moves that the Bengals ever made. You take a guy that was formerly a Pittsburgh Steeler and you jump right on him. And he has made some huge plays. It would not surprise me if Hilton he seems to always make the big play. And it would not surprise me if Mike Hilton makes the play of the game, as he always does, especially it being his former team. But, of course, no Jamar Chase this week. Of course, no DJ Reader. So I'm expecting guys on the defense. I'm actually surprised that Joseph Asai has not gotten a lot of playing time. Well, let me rephrase that. He hasn't gotten as much playing time as I would have expected. I know a lot of people are saying, well, maybe it's because of the play he made in the AFC title game. I don't think so. I just think that they're so loaded on that side of the ball, and they're going to have to make a decision on this guy eventually. This is year 3, you guys. Oh, excuse me. Yes, this is year 3. They've got to decide whether they're going to pick up his 5th-year option. Oh, excuse me, he's third-round pick. No, they don't have to do that. But you need to know what you got in this guy. Ultimately, he needs to get, some major reps. And it would not surprise me if he did get some, because he was such a huge part in their run to the AFC title game. And that one questionable call that was made was the difference. It ultimately was the difference. And as I said, let's get to the down to it. Looking at the Steelers, I think the only way the Steelers are going to win this game is unless Harris goes over 100. Najee Harris has to run for 100 yards in order for the Steelers to even have a chance. Mason Rudolph cannot beat this secondary in this pass rush the Bengals have. They're going to have to go play action pass. They're going to run heavy. If Mason Rudolph throws the ball more than 25 times, the Steelers are going to lose this game. They're going to have to run it and get turnovers. They're going to have to play a slow style offense. I'd say the same thing about Cincinnati. Cincinnati's going to have to run the football and go play action. They're not going to be able to hold down T.J. Watt. Which, surprising to me, is looking at what T.J. Watt has done this year. I'm surprised he doesn't have as many sacks as I know a lot of people are saying, "What? 16? He's number 1 in the league." But I'll say this: I think ultimately that's where they're going to have to stop him. If they can't get a handle on T.J. Watt and he just has one of those games, you could be looking at an upset. And honestly, part of me wants to roll with it and pick the Steelers because the game is in Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh has been under a microscope. And they have to get a win this week. They really do. But we should see. I think ultimately the Steelers, you can never count them out. You just can't. My gut is telling me Bengals, but then something in the back of my mind is saying Steelers. Because, with the Steelers, it's turnovers. And then, of course, with the Bengals, you got Mason Rudolph. Rudolph could turn the ball over, but then, Tomlin could come in and say, hey, we're going to run a conservative plan and try to make Browning make mistakes. Part of me is foreseeing that the Steelers are going to make a mistake. The Steelers are not going to allow they're not going to allow Rudolph to make mistakes. part of me is going with part of me wants to go with the Steelers. So ultimately, I am going to go with the desperate Pittsburgh Steelers. As much as I want to lean towards the Bengals, as my guts are telling me the Bengals, but I'm having a feeling that this is going to be a turnover-prone game for Jake Browning. He's been playing too out of sight, and I think what happens is he makes a couple mistakes, and I'm predicting either a scoop and score or a pick six for the Steelers. And this is going to be one of those games that's going to be like 10-7, 13-10, or something like that. It's not going to be high scoring. It's going to be the Steelers trying to control this game and the Cincinnati Bengals trying to get out of there with a win. Because they know they've still got more firepower than the Steelers. But I think the Steelers ultimately defensively play with more desperation. I know people are going to say it sounded like I was leaning towards Bengals. I was. But when the Steelers in Mike Tomlin's era is back against the wall, I got to take the Steelers. I have to take them. Because I don't see them going into Seattle and winning next week. I just don't see that. And they got to win at least two out of the next three to get to 500. So I'm taking the Steelers by a field goal. I'm taking them by a field goal. Reluctantly. Because most of me is saying Cincinnati, but then the other side of me is saying don't bet against Tomlin against the wall. But anyway, guys, that's going to do it for me tonight. Make sure you go over to our Facebook page at Gridiron Gab Pro Style and let me know what you guys think. I need to get a poll up for you guys so you guys can knock that out for me. And also, comment underneath the show. Let us know what you think and things we can do to get better as we prepare to go live next season. We will be doing lives next season and possibly throughout the season, whether it's the NFL draft or free agency or whatever the case may be. But until the next time, you guys, I hope you have a Merry Christmas and stay safe. Enjoy your family. Until the next time, same Gap channel, same Gap platform.
But behold, there is a warm breeze that comes from the west. The blazing sounds of victory fuel their everlasting quest. It is a call to arms, for they are here. An army that has the will to challenge and the will to dare.